Hi, sophomores. I hope that you are having a lovely day today. I believe today is Wednesday. I know that because it's trash day for me. So I hope online learning is going okay. If it's not, you guys, you need to reach out. Reach out to your teachers and let us know what it is that we can do to support you. This is a huge change for me. Like, I'm up here making YouTube videos. I feel like a strange combination of like a social media influencer and then also a customer service representative. What do you feel like? Curious. Okay, so people, getting into it for real. I've got two different topics that I want to talk to you guys about today. Today, the first thing that I want to talk to you guys about is your outline, okay, for your paper. I know that some of you guys are feeling a little bit overwhelmed with the idea of how to integrate a literary source. So I want to just remind you guys a couple of things about what literary sources are attempting to do for your paper. The value that we're attempting to convey by asking you to have a literary source is to remember that lots of different types of evidence are going to be valid for you as you go ahead and attempt to like construct an argument. For example, if I was trying to construct an argument right now about governments and governments being totalitarian during the time of COVID-19, what I would choose to do, sorry.
ChargeIn.com.
Okay, I believe I was constructing an argument about totalitarianism. Say I was discussing a government, completely hypothetical, that I believed was hoarding, for example, COVID-19 tests, or for example, immunity tests, or for example, had a vaccine and was choosing to give it to only a certain group of people. I might go ahead and I might use as evidence George Orwell's Animal Farm. I might discuss the Orwellian hoarding, like the pigs hoarded milk and apples. The government is hoarding tests. Now, again, this is just a fictitious government, or it could be talking about private industry, right? So I want you to appreciate that another example of using literary evidence, if you were talking about, for example, trying to talk about like a historical event. Do you guys remember when we were studying Shelley's Ozymandias? Ozymandias was the one that was about, we showed you the picture of the British statue of Ramses II at the British Museum. And we talked about how the theme of Ozymandias was that all empires fall. I mean, I think actually I'm taking a moment to think that, you know, on some level, the idea of being immune, right, is kind of like a new empire that's rising. I digress. What I'm trying to say is that we might choose to integrate Percy Shelley's poem Ozymandias like the New York Times did when they were reporting on that statue that was created in China, the one that ultimately was a huge statue in a place that had been very much hurt by the time in Mao. Individual citizens tore that statue down, and the New York Times led into it in order to show the timelessness of the themes, the idea that Percy Shelley had written about this and that we were seeing it being played out again. So one of the reasons that we use literature to talk about history is because it shows the universality, the repeating cyclical nature of what it is that we're trying to talk about. I think you probably heard a lot about the 1918 pandemic and the lessons that we may have been able to learn from to prepare for this pandemic. And so the idea that history repeats itself, not exactly, but thematically, you know, the so what, right, of pandemics can be similar, much like the so what of wars. So ultimately, guys, I hope that helps you just a little bit thinking about, you know, why we use a literary text with a historical research paper, like what it is that you're doing here. I also want to talk about where you might choose to use this type of evidence. You might choose to integrate literary evidence within your paper in a number of different ways. You might choose to use it as an epigraph. Remember, Mary Shelley used Milton, used at the very beginning of Frankenstein in order to set a particular tone, to talk about, you know, irony, to talk about, you know, who is actually a creator, who is created, and ultimately where responsibility lies. So Shelley, now granted that was before fiction, right, but chose to use an epigraph that way. You could do that, right, with your paper, and that would be one way to use a literary text. You could also use it as an epilogue, right, using it at the very end of the paper in order to go ahead and show, you know, something to bring things together, a so what, a literary so what, if you will. A lot of you might choose to go ahead and integrate it within your body paragraphs. That's also very reasonable. Going ahead and saying something like, you know, like we see in Animal Farm, or like in Percy Shelley's poem Ozymandias. You might choose to go ahead and show how, for example, some of your like more literary sources, some of you guys are using songs. And songs are part of the collective oral tradition, which I think says something about culture and about a people. So you also might want to think about when you're analyzing your literary form, what form it is and what effect that might have on the particular audience. How literate were they? How accessible were they? Was it written in the vernacular or the common language of the people? And so having that be kind of another layer is there. So ultimately, you guys, literary sources can really go anywhere. And they ultimately often are used to prove some aspect of universal theme within your paper. So I hope that helps. One thing I would love for you to do, if you're curious, if you still have a question about that and how to integrate your literary source into your paper, do go ahead and shoot me an email. Remember, I have office hours between 12 and 1 tomorrow, and I'll be happy to go ahead and respond to any of your questions there, and happy to show you some examples if that's something that would also be helpful. So that is the first piece that I want to talk to you guys about today. Next thing I want to talk to you guys for today, guys, is kind of where we are in language arts content. So for today, for your 25 minutes, obviously listening to however long this video is what I want you to do. And I want you to think about how to best use your literary source in order to maximize its impact on the thesis that you're trying to prove for your paper. And I want you to spend the remainder of your 25 minutes of language arts time today forwarding your outline, right? Getting it prepared, because we are going to be submitting that to turnitin.com on Friday. The other thing that I want to share with you is kind of where we're headed going forward. As you know, Elie Wiesel's memoir Night is something that you guys reflected on yesterday. I'm going to spend some time today looking at your responses and considering what it is that you learned and how much more we need to peek at that. There's two other pieces of our memoir unit that I think are going to come to great advantage for us. One thing that I learned a lot when I went to Baltimore in August, talking to the college professors that I met in particular, was the advantage of using your own lived experiences as evidence. So one of the things that I'm going to attempt to have you guys sort of foment over the next 9 weeks is a literary journal. I mean, it's not exactly, however literary it's going to be is really up to you. I mean, you may be about brevity, or you may be somebody that does want to go ahead and like dive deep and write this as like all in sonnets. I doubt it. But one thing that we are going to do over the next couple of weeks is we are going to be creating a pandemic memoir for ourselves. It's the form that you choose to have this take is going to be completely up to you, but every 2 weeks, you're going to submit 1 to 2 pages of turnitin.com about where you are in this pandemic. You might choose to continue the creative writing project that we talked about earlier, where like you are the virus and you're considering your own spread in order to to what extent have you been vanquished in various areas? I mean, you can make it super fictitious and shift the point of view, or you can legit be like, wow, I am brighter now, or, whatever that means to you. Like now I code. So thinking about the way that this journal might be most useful to you, and thinking about the you 20 years from now, maybe even 30 years from now, right? The you at my age that finds this possibly in some sort of box or digital drive, however we save things, and it was like, oh, is that what I thought in 2020? God, what a year. So tomorrow we're going to be doing a little bit of writing like that. And then, as you know, Friday, the Essential Learning Time will be polishing and submitting outline situations to turnitin.com. Next week, we are going to start looking at another memoir called A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid. So it's something that I'm going to be able to give you electronic access to, but you are also welcome and encouraged to go ahead and purchase the short memoir. She is somebody who's alive, and I think it's really great to purchase the work of authors that are there, even though, on some level, you have it, but it's a great one to have in your personal library. So when we consider a very different type of memoir so that we can do some compare and contrast work, that's where we're going to be headed next week. Okay, so sophomores, I hope that you are surviving. I hope that you email me if there's anything that you need. I was very impressed with your haiku. I was very happy to see that the vast majority of you guys are surviving. I don't know, big highs, big lows, right? With the pandemic, or maybe not. Maybe it's all the same. Okay, well, be sure to email me if there's some aspect of online learning that I can help you out with. And in the long run, I hope that you're doing well. Okay, thanks, guys.